I'm here with Paul Mason at his home. I met Paul at the Girical Blues Festival this year at the entrance. I was filming and photographing, and backstage I just mentioned to Paul that I interview bands about their musical life, and he said sure, so here we are 3 months later. So Paul, just tell us about, firstly, what you've been doing, say, the last 5 years.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, mainly I've been playing a lot of gigs around Sydney, mainly, and making a living playing the guitar, which is kind of pretty cool and sort of unheard of. Kind of seems to be becoming increasingly more difficult in some ways. But yeah, like I've been playing in a few bands. Like I was in a pretty prolific metal band for a long time that I kind of co-founded.
Battlesnake?
Band called Battlesnake, yeah. And I've sort of stepped away from that, just because I'm sort of needing to like do more of my sort of solo statement, my solo sort of career musical statement thing, and but yeah, like I've also co-founded the Monday Jam as well, which is like a pretty prolific, sort of internationally known jam session in Sydney, where lots of people from, if they're touring internationally, they'll come through and have a hit with us. So I get to meet a lot of people through that, and that kind of plugs me into the scene here quite a bit as well, which is cool. And yeah, what else? Like I've put a couple of singles out just of my own music, where I sort of write the thing and get some help recording it properly and sing a bunch of stuff, and then just playing with a bunch of bands around Sydney, and basically just a bit of session work and a bit of solo stuff,
And who was the band with you at Girical?
Yeah, so I had Warren Trout on the drums, who I've been playing with for years. He's a great drummer. He was just recently playing with Dragon. He's played with Tina Arena and John Farnham, Jimmy Barnes. He's like a long time, professional working, drummer. My brother was on bass, Noel Mason, who's just recently won an ARIA for his an album that he was on with a band called the Vampires. They're a really cool kind of dub reggae jazz band. And then on keyboards was the great David Pritchard, who's David Pritchard Blunt, who used to he was the musical director for Australian Idol and Marsha Hines' band and stuff. And he's a great keyboard player, great arranger as well. And he actually all of my solo material, he actually did all the charts for me, which I'm very grateful to him for, So Dave's great. He's a great guy, great keyboard player, great music. They're all fantastic. I'm really lucky to play with those. And I mean, anyone that comes on and gives their time or their Friday or Saturday night to do a gig with me, I'm very grateful. But yeah, it's been a little bit of a revolving door lately with like my own show. I mean, I've had a few different guys do it. There's a really good young drummer that I think is either just finished or he might still be out the corner, a guy called Jackson Foster. Great young drummer. Casey Golden as well has recently been doing some keyboard stuff for me too. And he's an awesome jazz. He's like a very great jazz piano player, but he can do all the other stuff as well. But he's got 7 or 8 albums out, and his albums are really cool. And then the mainstay as well has been Noel, because Noel obviously is my twin brother, and we do the Monday Jam together, and I've also been playing in this Latin jazz band called Omatomico, which is it's like a Latin jazz, but it's dance music as well. So that gig's been really fun. We've been playing at a bunch of venues and kind of hosted a few of our own events. And that band's pretty interesting. It's folkloric Latin jazz music, but I kind of like the the guy who's banned it is Carlos Mora, who's a mad conga player and has been around for a while as well. He just wants me to like shred over it, so I kind of get to just play in this Latin jazz band, but like I'm playing a lot of rock guitar. So, but yeah, no, it's been cool. It's been sort of, you know, fairly varied. I've done a lot of touring as well over the years. I was in Jessica Mauboy's band for like 12 years.
So how did you get into Jessica's band?
So it was funny. Like when I first kind of burst onto the scene, I guess at sort of age 19 or 20, because I went to Newtown High School of the Performing Arts, and I started doing the Department of Education sort of selective jazz big band stuff. So there was this organisation called the Performing Arts Unit, and they had a bunch of like concert bands, but they had a jazz like stage band, and you would audition to get into it. So by the time I was in sort of like year 9 or 10, I was sort of starting to get like my chops together a little bit, because someone showed me, my friend Abraham Rounds, who's Victor Rounds' son, Victor's a great bass player, and Abe's overseas. He's been playing with like Michelle Indigia cello, and you know, I think he turned down the gig with Lenny Kravitz. You know, like that's how good he is. You know? Anyway, but Abe's great. Abe's been a huge influence on my kind of early musical life when I was a teenager, and so I went to Newtown, and then by the time I was like in my late teens and I'd finished high school, I went to the con for 2 years and I did a Bachelor of Jazz Guitar, and then I started working professionally. Like I started doing a bunch of gigs. And the con was sort of I was sort of not really into the tertiary.
That's Conservation Sydney
Conservatorium, yeah. So I did the jazz course for 2 years and learned from Steve Bryan. I mean, it's a great course. It's great. You know, Mike Knock was my impro teacher, and you know, so it was cool. It was like, but I was just a bit at that age. I just wanted to get out, and I just wanted to be out in the scene, you know. So I kind of ditched it at 2 years in, and because I started working. But how did I get the gig with Jess? So around a similar time, there was this band that would play regularly on, I can't remember what day in the week it was, but it was the Daryl Beaton and the D1 Cartel band, right? So it was like Daryl Beaton and all the Martinez brothers, like Daono, Phoenix, Andro, Parnell, and who would play drums? Kevin Mendoza, you know, R.I.P. Was playing drums. So I would go down there with Abe, and we would just sit in and play a couple of tunes with them. And because Abe was playing in a bunch of bands around town as well, and he was like my mate, like really we were full bros. He's still a very, very dear friend, you know. So I basically went down there and I sat in a couple of times, and the next week or so, like I just remember seeing Daryl just kind of hanging out, and I just went and sat down and started chatting to him. And I think, yeah, and then it was like a few months later, I think because I was sort of starting to get around the scene, maybe he'd already like heard of me, or he had maybe asked some people about me, and they were like, oh yeah, that guy, you know, that guy knows his stuff or whatever. And he asked me to play with Stan Walker, who was another idol. He's another incredible singer. Like, I mean, it's funny. I suppose they have this kind of a curse of like the Australian Idol thing. I mean, you know, not that it's a curse, but there's a bit of a stigma with like coming off of that show, which I can understand, but it doesn't negate the fact that these people are amazing to, when you're actually standing next to them, hearing them sing like Stan and like Jess as well. Like, it's pretty amazing. You know, I've been really
Sebastian and
Guy Sebastian, yeah. They're
Shannon Noel.
Yeah, like, they're all motherfucking singers, man. I mean, they have to be to win on that show. Like, so when you hear them, like, it is something like pretty special. So yeah, I think like I'd introduced myself to Daryl, and I'd sort of played with him a bit, and he was kind of at the time, and he still is, like, he's still a very prolific professional MD, music director, keyboard player. But at the time, he was doing all the Sony stuff. So then when they wanted to have a band of like, you know, sort of hip, cool young cats that could play, that could like do the like pop and the rock thing, but I came from like a pretty stringent like jazz background, you know, because I used to get lessons off James Muller, who for me is like the greatest, you know, one of the greatest guitar players Australia has ever produced, you know. So I was like a pretty strict jazz guy. Yeah, that's why I got into the con. Like I got an early first round offer into the conservatorium. I was the only guitarist in the whole state to get one of those offers. You know, so I kind of had this concept together pretty early from doing all this PAU stuff, playing in these big bands, because I was playing with horn players that I still know, like people like Ken Allars and like Dane Laboyerie, but particularly Ken these guys were like well beyond me when I started playing in that band. They were like light years ahead of me. So by the time you know, I'd been in there for 2 or 3 years and I'd been getting lessons, I'd sort of managed to kind of close the gap, and I kind of had this concept together where I kind of figured out how to play through the chord changes properly, and I was reading, you know, I'm not the world's greatest reader, but I can read. There was just one other thing. Oh yeah, and then also recently, in the last couple of years, or in the last sort of 5 years actually, like I've been doing these concerts of these tribute concerts of Jeff Beck's music, because I've, you know, was ever since that sort of age 19, 20, I started really getting into Jeff Beck, and so was presenting concerts of his music, you know, obviously not that I'm aiming to sound like he did. No one ever will ever, because he's the man. But yeah, when he died, I put on a big evening in honour of the great Jeff Beck, and I had Peter Northcote, kind of, you know.
Was this at the factory where
it was?
That's where you met Sting.
That's where Sting.
Yeah,
that's where Sting became involved.
That.
Yeah, I know. I wish you had. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, so yeah, that was a very like serendipitous thing, because one of the other guitar players that I invited to do it is a guy called Jeremy Sawkins, who just happens to be really good mates with Dominic Miller. So Dominic came in and heard our second rehearsal, and was like, man, you know, these guys sound really good, or whatever. It's a pretty legit thing, and he just like told Sting about it, and he obviously had some fairly complimentary things to say about the, you know, the level of seriousness that we were, because you know, yeah, it was a hugely, because it's like hallowed ground playing that music, especially now, and we did, and I've always tried to, if you know, even when I started putting that event together, it was during COVID that I sort of hatched I mean, I always loved Jeff Beck, but I was like, doing like a night of Jeff Beck stuff, I didn't want it to feel like a tribute-y thing. Like, I didn't want it to seem gimmicky at all. Like, I wanted to do it in a way that, like, even the word tribute act, I didn't want that word anywhere near associated with it.
To show that we're serious musicians who actually admire Jeff Beck, and we want to play his music to show how much we really did respect him. So. Exactly,
yeah, and not do it in a way that was sort of gimmicky, or that we were trying to trade off of it in any way. It was like, yeah, I mean, maybe, you know, it's hard to play a night of someone's music without doing that to a degree, but yeah, like I definitely wanted it to, I didn't want it to, yeah, like there are different connotations with doing, you know, my evening in honour of the great Jeff Beck. I would very much hope then, like, you know, another ABBA tribute act, or another, you know, this person plays Hendrix or whatever. Not to say that, you know, it's not that, I'm not poo-pooing that ABBA or Hendrix at all in any way, you know. But it's obviously it's a bit, the music's a little bit less accessible. and you know, ABBA's music is like amazing as well. Anyway, you know, and obviously so is Hendrix. Yeah, I mean, but Jeff Beck was Jimi Hendrix's favorite guitar player as well. You know, which I feel like not a lot of people know that. But yeah, so the last 5 years, yeah, I think I've hopefully went on a bit of a rant that covered hopefully most of that. But yeah.
So Paul, when you first started, did you have in your family? Did you have like your parents or anyone in your family that were into music that got you started, or did you just on your own bat start?
Yeah, so my dad is a pretty prolific. He was a pretty prolific like frontman back in the day. His stage name was Kenny Ansett. So he was like a rock and roll guitar, and he still is. Like, he still plays great, and he was like a rock and roll guitarist, frontman kind of guy. Like more like, I'm kind of probably more like alternative rock, adult contemporary, like the style that I play, and I obviously play a lot of different styles. But my sort of the music that I write and present as a solo artist is more in that sort of alternative, adult contemporary rock kind of a vibe. But my dad was very much a rock and roll man. Like, he would do like Little Richard and Chuck Berry. But he knows thousands of songs. Like, he's bloody like encyclopedic. So he knows all the old Beach Boys stuff, and he knows all the Beatles stuff, and he knows, he's incredible. He knows all the Shadows stuff. I mean, a lot of that stuff. I know a bunch of that music as well, but. But yeah, so he sort of got me into playing really early. I've got like a really tiny little Stratocaster that I started mucking around on when I was like 4 or 5, 6 maybe. I've got footage of that. Actually, I can send you some of that footage. Just me dicking around at home like a little crazy kid. But yeah, so it was really my father that sort of wanted, he wanted Noel and I to have some, maybe. I think he wanted us. Yeah, he obviously wanted us to pursue music. But he went over and he was touring around London playing with Frank Ifield back in the day, and there's another. He was Johnny O'Keefe's guitar player as well for a minute there, I think. But he used to MD for a few people. Like, I think and music directed for Frank Ifield as well, and then he also sort of had his own kind of a solo act that he would mainly do that, I think. Yeah, Kenny Ansett back in the day was like pretty prolific around the clubs, So yeah.
Were you playing at school? Like, did you get with any friends at school that?
Yeah, so when at Newtown Performing Arts, where I went to high school, it was like I mentioned before. It was a lot of my sort of jazz interest was sparked by my friend Abraham Rounds, and he was just like, because he got to Newtown, like I could play, like I was sort of good enough to get in and that was like a selective performing arts school, so I got in there on the level that I had gotten to by age sort of 12 or 13. But like when I saw Abe play, it was a whole other level, and he was like, we were year 7, right? So we're 12 turning 13, and he was like already a professional level drummer, like really good, because he just had this cool kind of laid back pocket, maybe a little bit of Aussie Fijian sort of pocket. That he's still, that's this wonderful like feel that he has, because everyone has like everyone has their way that they naturally feel the time when they play, and that's what musicians, I think, respond to the most is like how your time feel is. And I think going through those 6 years in high school, doing a lot of playing with Abe, like I feel like, I mean, I'm sure I already had a pretty natural time thing that felt pretty good, but like playing with him and as well as being part of him and his dad's life, which his dad Victor, I did a gig with Victor like a couple months ago, which was like, and it was mad, you know, it was like a really, really awesome gig. Just playing like some of my stuff, and Victor did a few of his songs as well. Like I still have a really strong connection with Vic, well, especially because Abe's not here, you know, but like it's a real, he was like a surrogate father. Victor was like a surrogate father figure to me growing up, you know, and that connection for me is still very strong. So, and I think, yeah, like I think growing up with Abe and being around those guys at that time, that were like, yeah, like I think that feel of just the way they feel the time when they play music, I think that kind of rubbed off on me. So I think by the time I was sort of getting around the scene a bit, like the way I would sort of maybe just the way the time feels, like I think I kind of, this little sort of sweetness to the, could just be a rhythm part or something, you know. And I mean, there's a lot of incredible guitar players in Sydney and they all play great rhythm guitar, you know, but I think at that time, like being as young and especially looking as young as I did, like I was a bit of a late bloomer, you know, so by the time I was like 18, 19, like I was kind of this gaunt, really young looking creature, you know, that could play all these different styles of guitar. But a lot of the early and initial interest was sparked by my dad, you know, because my dad's incredible at what he does, and you know, definitely raised Noel and I really, really well, and you know, yeah, like I'm really lucky. Like my parents are still together, and I came from a very stable family home, you know, which is like, yeah, it's something that's, I guess it's easy to take for granted if you've already had that, but yeah, I try not to take that for granted, you know, because my parents are wonderful people, you know.
And were you buying records at all, or where were you getting your music from?
So
besides your dad, like
yeah,
his
so
collection.
Yeah, my dad had a bunch of records, and he would play his stuff. But when I was sort of hitting that, because my music interest didn't really peak until I was in my teens, in high school, and that at that time that was sort of when YouTube was just starting to hit, right? So I was so by that time there was no streaming at that point yet, you know, but I remember I would go and buy CDs at Birdland. That was what I used to do. Like I'd save up, you know, $40 or $60, and then I remember and I would go into the city on a weekend, get myself a Mad Laksa or something, and go to Birdland, because that was the only place where I could get like Pat Metheny records or like older George Benson records, you know, or like James Muller's album, you know, I bought there, you know.
Do you play any of them in any sets? Or?
The Metheny stuff, I haven't, like, I mean, I've transcribed a bunch of his stuff, and I can sort of, you know, get in the ballpark of what he does, because I mean, yeah. I mean, you kind of end up, what so impressed me about him was just how fluid he is, and the way he can sort of like dance through the chord. I mean, a lot of guitar players are amazing at that, but particularly the way that he does it, like he's just, you know, and it's a whole thing, you know, like the way he kind of just dances around the harmony, you know, everything's very sort of soft, you know, like, I mean, I'm not going to, but like, that was something that really drew me to just that really fluid, that really fluid. I mean, Mahler does that incredibly as well, just to be able to play in that chromatic way. Because when I was coming up, like I first got really interested in like Eric Clapton and Mark Knopfler. They were my sort of, I was sort of into that kind of, and I still really obviously love Mark Knopfler, but then I heard Abe showed me like Have You Heard by Pat Metheny, which is this, it's like a C minor blues, but it's got that kind of a feel. And Metheny would just have this real fluid approach, and I was just like, I have to learn how to do that, and it took years to do it, to get it to the point of to develop like my approach to that kind of playing, but it's just about that sort of fluid approach. I mean, if I'm just that kind of a fluid, like jazz approach, like
shuffling around in the
yeah,
background.
it's all about that, like. I'm just playing a bit of like All the Things You Are, which I haven't played for a while, but yeah, being able to sort of like know what chord, what's going to really define what makes that chord sound the way it sounds. From playing an A minor 6, like, what and then being able to do that, not that I'm amazing at doing it everywhere on the neck. Like I have certain positions where I'm more comfortable with certain chords and sounds and stuff. But that said, I know a lot of chords on the guitar, and I know a lot of ways of getting something musical to happen if I've got to play over those chords, for example. But that took a few years to get together, and that is how you sort of play jazz guitar. That's how and I think it's important. Like for me, I wanted to learn how to do that. But that said, you don't need to know how to do that to be a great guitar player or a great musician. You can still. People have a lot of different approaches to how they learn the instrument and how they get to a level of being proficient with the instrument. It's like someone like Dominic Miller, for example. I don't think he's the kind of player that could play a chord melody over a jazz standard. But that doesn't mean he's not an incredible guitar player with incredible technique that makes a beautiful sound. He's he comes from a little bit more of a classical background than someone like me. And you can hear that when he plays electric guitar, his technique is just flawless. Like it's just everything is so clean and precise. But could he play a jazz guitar intro to Stella by Starlight? Hell yeah, if he learnt it, or if he worked it out, absolutely. But he's not going to be able to sort of like just improvise that in the same way that John Scofield might. So but that's not to say that either one is less or more valid than the other. It's just they're two very different approaches. And even someone like Jeff Beck, who's like the greatest guitar player to have ever lived, I don't think he knew a huge amount of like what harmonically was going on. Like he wouldn't think I'm going to play A melodic minor like over that chord. He wasn't thinking that. He was just like this force of nature, and made this incredible sound. And like it was more a tonal palette as well with him. Like it was like the way he would just pull the sounds,
Like his style in the Yardbirds is completely different to what he's known for overall.
Completely. Well, he reinvented himself every decade. He was like Miles Davis in that way. Like he's sort of like, and I didn't come up with this. It was I think Pete Townsend might have actually said it. He's like the Miles Davis of rock guitar, which I think is pretty apt. Because he would, you're exactly right. Like everything, he kind of like made. This guitar is great. This is Greg's guitar.
Before you got into Battlesnake, like so, after you've left the School of Music or the Conservatorium, what bands were you playing with? 'Cause, they weren't your bands, were they? So you would join another band?
So I did have, so there was one band that was an originals band which ended up being called the Ruckus for most of the time I was in it, and that was like an original band, like we were doing the band thing, you know. And out of that band kind of, out of the ashes of that band, Battlesnake was kind of born, you know, because one of the guys that was in that band initially with me, Ben Frank, who we kind of let him go after a while, and that band ended up kind of fizzling out. We still wrote some great songs though. Like there's a single that I'm going to put out, which is probably going to be my next single after the one that is scheduled for release on the 8th of August. Which, like, I ended up cutting the vocal on this song that I'm talking about. And it was for me it was the best song that I ever wrote in that band, and I wrote all the guitar stuff, but we wrote that song was collectively written. I mean, I didn't write the lyric or the vocal on it. Tommy Gray wrote that. But it
really?
just
I know Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy, yeah. So that was the first original, real proper original.
His father too.
Yeah. I'm just blanking.
About going into the next band.
No, about what Tommy's dad's name. Phil. What's his dad's name?
Drummer.
Yeah. I saw him bloody 2 weeks ago.
I've filmed him so many times.
Yeah. Anyway, that's so bad because he's one of my great mates. Jim Finn. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, my first real proper originals band was with Tommy, you know, and Bernardo Tobias on the bass. The drumming chair was kind of a bit of a revolving door. But yeah, Ben Frank, who sort of, you know, we formed Battlesnake together initially, like, that band kind of was Ben's little sort of brainchild for a while, because he wanted to make a band with like his two favourite guitar players, which was myself and Daniel Willington. And so the nucleus of like the genesis of what Battlesnake was like the three guitar thing, you know. So anyway, I'm sure that they're doing really well. Like they just got on the ARIA charts.
And what was the style? Metal was it all?
So the Ruckus was kind of like more rock, a bit more like my style, a bit more like alternative rock, you know, like still with like a virtuosic element to it. But Battlesnake is like a real kind of like progressive metal, but Battlesnake still has elements of classic rock as well, you know. But it's a more like more heavy, upbeat, kind of headbanging kind of stuff, branding wise, you know. So it's a metal band.
I was a manager of a band called Crush.
Okay, cool.
That was in the Mortal Sin era.
Yeah, right.
They were friends. They were the whole scene. They were all friends.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess that's what it was. These things kind of run in scenes, I guess. You know, like there was like the whole Frankie's thing. Like that was a scene unto itself for a while. Yeah. You know, I must have played there like probably 100 times over the last.
Yeah, it was a shame it closed.
Yeah. Anyway, zoning. So great, love that. You know.
So with this band, Battlesnake, what's the name from? Is there a particular reason?
I think it was just a great name for a metal band. You know, and it was Benny's sort of baby. You know, it still is. You know, it's like it was Ben and Sam's dream to form a really great band. You know, and they're doing it. You know.
And where did you play it?
We played everywhere. Like we did like we toured up and down the East Coast a whole bunch over the years. You know, went up and did all the music conferences, and then I did their first international tour that they did. So we did like Belgium and the Netherlands and a bunch of UK, and then it was just getting to the point where like I was kind of like still trying to do this like solo, my make my sort of solo statement, be my own sort of man kind of thing. And I kind of just had to make the decision that band, while it's like, you know, I love that band and I love those guys and I loved playing those songs that we wrote, you know, because I wrote most of the guitar solos that were like 3-part or 2 or 3-part harmonized guitar solos on the catalogue that I'm a part of. I wrote all those solos, you know, a lot of them. Not all of them, but a lot. Oh, it's the shower, I think. Oh. Yeah. And so yeah, it's like a very special thing for me. But it was getting to the point where it was just gonna take over my whole musical existence. It was basically becoming like the level of touring that they're now doing I wouldn't have been able to do anything else, you know. And I've always had my hand in a bunch of different pies. Recently, I should mention, I'm MDing for a great artist called Silent Ngo. He's a Zimbabwean Mozambican.
I was actually going to ask you about that. I saw it on your site.
Yeah. Silent's incredible. Like, he's like one of the best guitar players I've ever heard and singers. Like, he's just amazing. Like, he's got so much soul and spirit to what he does. And so yeah, we've got this a partnership venture that's something we're putting together called Ancestral Strings, and we're gonna like showcase, hopefully soon, like internationally showcase, like we'll build together, and I'll MD and play for him, and then I'll have my own act as well. We're gonna like hopefully put on some festivals or be part of a bunch of festivals that will have an emphasis on like this spiritual guitar music that he and I that we both create, or attempt to create, in my case. But yeah, so that's kind of pretty exciting. That's sort of a fairly new and recent thing that's been going on.
And what about? I read a couple of things about the jazz festivals that you won.
Oh yeah, so when I
won at Wangaratta.
So I didn't win. I mean, I got into the finals. You know, so
that's the Wangaratta one.
The Wangaratta, yeah, that was like 2014 or 2012. So that was crazy because I got down there. I got really sick when I was down there as well. I don't know how. I drove down there. The other thing was I had to turn down going to Japan with Jess for a gig, right? Which was pretty annoying. But I mean, I was like, I've got to do Wangaratta. Like, it's like the jazz guitar competition of Australia. I have to go and compete. You know, I got into the bloody top 10 somehow, which is crazy. You know, and that year, I mean, yeah, it was like they take 10 finalists, and 4 of us were from Sydney. It was me, Ollie Thorpe, Carl Morgan, who won it, and Peter Koopman, who came 3rd that year and then won it the next 8 years later or whatever it was. So I had to go down there, because it's like a big. It was, James Muller and Steve Magnuson and Mike Knock were like the judges, and I got down there and I was bloody sick and throwing up the whole night before, and then I feel like I probably played like crap, but I still kind of tried to do my thing, but I was so like nervous playing, I didn't really like I remember it, like I wasn't really like making music, like I was kind of just like getting it done, which was sort of a shame because I really wanted, but it probably wouldn't have made much difference anyway. Like Carl and Peter and Hugh Stuckey, they were the top 3. I wasn't going to be able to compete with those guys if, like in the jazz thing, like oh man, they're absolutely amazing, beautiful. And I think a lot of that is attributed to James. I think, you know, to James Muller. Like, he sort of, when he kind of got to Sydney, it was like this bloody bomb went off, you know. It was like there was this. It's just this special, very special thing, and all of the guys that are around that age, around my age, like the guys I mentioned, like Ollie and Carl and Peter, we just all grew up in awe of him. You know, we used to go and watch him play when we were teenagers, and he was just playing it like he was doing like the Sydney jazz sideman thing, you know. But I was hearing whispers about this guy while I was still in high school, you know, before I even really knew about, like, I was just starting to get into jazz. And I remember when I was in this big band with the PAU, we went down and did the Mount Gambier Generations in Jazz Festival, where they get all the school and music school and selective big bands from all over the country, and they go down and play a set of tunes. And James Morrison judges them. So I went down there, and then I see this kind of, you know, like this guy, this like tall, like very authoritative, you know, like white pasty guy. Still looked like fucking cool though. Like he looked so like sort of like just the authority. Like he has got so much. He's like a very enigmatic guy, you know. But I just remember just looking at him like this big tall dude, like playing like that exact guitar. Not that, you know. I could have bought his one actually. I really regret I should have bought it. But anyway, he was playing one of these, like the Schofield sort of AS200. And I just remember hearing him play, and my mate Brendan Clark was like, "Is that James Muller?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know what James Muller looks like. I've heard of James Muller," but I was like, "I think that's Muller," you know. And then he just remembered. You just hear him play, and he just rips shreds off everybody, you know. But yeah, I was lucky. I think it might have even been that thing. Like I got this like scholarship award. It was called the Pat Corrigan Rising Star Award or something. Yeah, back in the day. Because I played like I got selected as like the featured soloist competition, and they basically round up all. James Morrison would just round up all of the guys from all of the bands that he thought were good soloists, you know, and I got picked, and then out of those, like I played I didn't even think I played a very good solo, but I somehow like won this thing. I got like this $3,000 award, funded by Pat Corrigan, who's like I can't remember what he did, but he was very prolific in the sort of philanthropic kind of music thing, I think in South Australia or around Mount Gambier or something. And I was like, I got this like $3,000 award. I was like 16 or something, 16 or 17. It probably went straight to my head at the time. Anyway.
Did you ever play with James Morrison?
I did, yeah.
With him in his band? Or
Yeah. I did a gig with him, like a couple of times. Yeah, like we did one at a church up in up over in the Northern Beaches, because he's from up there. They all live up there. And I did this. It was just like a jazz gig in a church. I think it might have been at his church or something that he goes to. So I got to, and then we did another gig with him at Bankstown Airport one time. Yeah. So yeah, I played with James a few times, you know. And I played with him recently. I did the the big Australia Day concert at the Opera House. I got to play with him there. We did the big silly Thunderstruck intro thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, man, James is cool. I mean, he's you know.
Yeah, I filmed him at the State Theatre with Ian Moss and.
Oh yeah, it would be awesome. Yeah, man.
It was a charity, the variety show.
Yeah, wow.
It was really good.
Yeah.
So, and you've also, how does Kiss come into the picture?
So when I was with Battlesnake, we opened for them once. Yeah, we supported them. We opened for them at the Acer Arena or whatever it is. Yeah. So yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
And what about Smashing Pumpkins?
So similar thing. We opened for with Battlesnake, but we did a tour. That was a tour. Like it was like this big variety concert where they had like Red Hook did it, we did it. Red Hook's like a mad emo sort of punk emo band that Emmy Mac fronts. It's a great band for that 90s sort of emo sort of thing. They killed it. But yeah, it was like this variety concert. So Billy Corgan, because he runs like a wrestling federation or something. So he brought his like wrestling thing out, and then the Smashing Pumpkins played, and then they got a bunch of different and it was oh my god, Josh Klinghoffer played guitar, and so it was us, and then it was Red Hook, and then it was Josh Klinghoffer played guitar, and Perry Farrell is the singer. What's that band? I kind of missed that whole thing. I can't remember what they were called. I'm gonna look stupid for not knowing that. But yeah, there was that band that Dave Navarro was mainly the guitar player in, and there was just recently that video where Perry Farrell and he had a big dummy spit at Dave Navarro. Mm-hmm. Pressure cooker touring with bands with big egos, hence why it ain't for everyone. I did it for like, how long would I have done that for? 10, 15 years. That was enough.
And what about Harry Connick?
Oh yeah, so actually Warren gave me this mad opportunity because Michael Dolce was away I think because he does these masterclasses where he tours all over the country with, and he normally would have done this gig, but I was playing it just aired recently actually because someone told me that they saw me on it. It was for this show called The Piano, where it's like sort of like basically like Australian Idol but with more of a focus on piano and piano players.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. They walk into the shopping centre and they might be a painter or something. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, so it's good. It's very like TV gimmicky vibe, like forcing the heartstrings to be tugged on. In a way. And I mean, look, whatever, it's fine. I'm sure it's a very compelling show if I just don't watch a lot of TV, but yeah, like I just was brought in to play for his name's John Yacko. He's a great young guy, really good muso. He's like putting his own music out now and stuff. And so I was just brought in to play guitar on the final of his piece, which was it was just that In Excess song. It was just that tune, so I just was there to, not stuff that bit up, which I managed not to do, thankfully, which I managed to not stuff it up, thankfully. But yeah, Harry Connick was like the coach on the show, so we were just there and like he kind of did a little segment where we played the tune and then he'd coach John a bit and he'd give him a bit of coaching on like how to like cue the band or this or that. Like it was really good to watch, and you could just you could just tell like Harry Connick, everyone knows Harry Connick. He's that like jazz thing that I'm talking about, like knowing all that harmony and like being able to know, like he's a master of that approach to music. Like he's like his jazz chops are killer, and he's also like a really cool charismatic guy. You can see why he's a star, it's like, yeah. But that was really cool. Like I got to actually like work with him because he sort of like gave feedback on John's performance, and he came and said hello to all of us, and he loved Warren. He was like, he was like, make sure you and your drummer are like, Warren, and like, 'cause just the way he interacted with Warren was really cool, you know, because they're probably like maybe similar in age, you know, so they kind of like, I was seeing them kind of like bro out a little bit. I was like, yeah, was fucking legend, you know. But yeah, no, that was cool. So I got to like work with Harry Connick Jr. You know, it's been a pretty crazy like last couple of years, yeah, with like the whole Sting thing, and yeah, hopefully a lot more to come, you know.
And what about your session work? How'd you get into that? Like,
yeah,
this is background session work. Like, are you on albums and you're credited on it, or is it just the artist? Or?
Yeah, so yeah, like I haven't, like, in terms of like session stuff like that. Like, there's not a lot of session work for a guitar player, you know, in Australia, and what work there is, Ollie Thorpe does it all, you know, like, because he's like incredible pedal steel player as well. So I mean, there is for like the country scene, you know, but I'm not so in that scene, you know. Like I have done country sessions, and I have done the occasional country tour or played for a couple of country artists. Like I did Claire Bowen's first tour when she came out with Timothy Bowen, and I played on a bunch of Timothy Bowen's records and kind of co-written songs with him and stuff as well. But like, yeah, the country scene today, it's like, it's sort of like, in Sydney particularly, it's sort of a bit of this sort of alternative country sort of scene. And I'm not super in that scene, like, because I'm sort of come up a bit more from the jazz side of things, and I'm probably a bit more known as like a rock guy, because I was, you know, did Battlesnake, and I've been in rock bands, and then doing Jess Mowboy's thing for that long as well. Like, I'm sort of known as a session guy in that sense. Like, the even the word being a session musician today, I think, has changed. You know, like, if a real session musician, I would identify as someone like Tom Bukovac, you know, who gets called in to you know, make someone's record or sound great, or makes their songs sound great, and then he's got every amazing guitar sound under the sun, and he's got this incredible. He's a motherfucker, you know. I don't know if I can swear on this, hopefully. But he is for me today, like, he's probably what I would consider a session guitarist. He's like the yardstick, you know. Yeah, but it's like, it's interesting, you know. You got someone, it's like, you look at someone like Steve Lukather, like big time session guy, you know, and played in a great band or whatever it was, you know.
Taylor.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. Yeah, so I do. Yeah, I have done a lot of session work over the years and stuff, but yeah, like less so these days. Like, I'm probably more just being like a solo act these days, mainly. Yeah. And
I know you've got a gig at 3. What about what's the future for your music that you want to bring out? Your own music.
Yeah, well, I basically just want to keep playing and presenting that just presenting my like statement as a solo sort of artist, you know, like you know, I think what I've been doing is like pretty soulful, you know, and like it has a fairly, like, I think it has something that is like completely unique, and like kind of special, you know, like just me doing a gig when like when things line up, you know, when I got a great band and things are sounding good and stuff, like. So yeah, like, I think it's like totally, yeah, it's totally a cool thing for me to keep building on that, you know, and keep presenting, like, yeah, because I sort of play a bunch of songs that I've written, and then I play a bunch of other songs that other people have written that I think I can do something interesting and soulful on, you know. So yeah.
Would you like to just play a song to finish up?
Yeah, I'll play one of mine. just one reason. Have a love his timing and just keeping it we'll choose the line. We can win this fight. What is it really ever for? Those times are gone. What are we both fighting to make it better now than it was before? So give me just one reason. We take our time to stay here and we stay on course. What are we both fighting for? Make it better now than it was before. So give me just one reason. We take our time to stay here and we stay on course. What are we both fighting for? Make it better now than it was before. So give me just one reason. Have a lovely time and just keep me score. Yeah,
That's the song I put on my YouTube channel from Girical. I really liked it.
that was your favourite one.
But you
Yeah.
said you didn't like the version you did.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it still kind of worked on that video, but by the time the end of the gig, and I think I you know, I shouldn't say this, but I think I'd been a bit of a bloody lazy idiot, and I hadn't changed my strings for that gig. So by the time I got to the end of the gig, the guitar was so I couldn't because I'm always doctoring the tuning, you're always kind of tweaking, you're hearing it's hard to keep the guitar in tune. The thing's never in tune ever, you know. So you just kind of do your best. But by the time I'd gotten to the last tune of that gig, which was that song, the guitar was just really not behaving, you know. And it got to the point where I was even these kinds of chords, I have to be able to play you can even hear that. If you really listen to it, it's not super in tune, but you sort of there's a lot of little tricks that you can do to kind of make it sound more in tune than it is. But it got to the point where I'm I couldn't play multiple strings, you know, because obviously. So I had to, because I would play it and I'm going fuck, it's so out of tune. Anyway, this is what we have to deal with, you know, playing an instrument that's sort of a live thing, that's a live, you know, it's wood to me the, you know, if I was just gonna finish, I'll just finish on this. To me, the guitar is it's an alive thing, you know. It's it's connected to you, and what you know, you're making the thing talk in the way that you talk, and sometimes it's defiant, you know.
Doesn't want to do what you want.
Yeah, sometimes it's exactly it's this alive, moving target of a thing that you know, you can sort of think it'll be, you can have a great night playing a great gig and everything sounds amazing and everything's so in tune, and then the next night you're like, God, what is going on tonight?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it really keeps you on your toes, Yeah. No, Greg, thanks so much, man. Thanks so much for...
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Paul.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming over.
I've been wanting to do it for a while.
Yeah, man.
I think I will come down and record you today.
Oh yeah, okay. If
yeah.
you can, it'd be great. I mean, it's probably not the most like interesting gig. I guess I'll just be more or less doing a little bit like what I've done today.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
All right then. Well, thanks for that.
Yeah, man.
And I'll see you
Awesome.
this afternoon.
Yeah. Bro.